Welcome back to the Colossal Color Showdown. This is episode 19 and the final episode of this season of the Colossal Color Showdown. In this video, we're going to carry on taking a look at the opera that we started off in last week's video. As you can see, we have 8 operas. Well, we have 7 operas as well as Stuart Semple's Pinkest Pink. Not technically an opera, but I know you guys will be wondering, so here it is in this comparison. So let's start with the gradated washes, and these samples should show 4 clear stages like the Daniel Smith, and this shows that we will get a good control when we want to do gradated washes with these paints. However, when you look at colours like Holbein, Sennelier, Schmincke and Jackson's art, you're not seeing 4 clear stages. I would say I'm seeing 3 stages. So you have the strongest colour, the middle colour and the palest colour, but it's not 4 stages. This means you're going to have a little bit more problem trying to control the intensity of your gradated washes and how well the colour gradates. In that sense, I would say that Daniel Smith, Winsor Newton, Mission Gold is the best bet if you do a lot of gradated washes in your artwork and you want to do it with the opera pink. In terms of cauliflowering, that's where you get these outlines from the water. You definitely notice them with the Mission Gold, Jackson's art, Sennelier and Schmincke. So if you are not quite so confident in your water control, you might end up with these blooms happening, in which case I would say that the Daniel Smith, Holbein and Winsor Newton are better for you until you get used to doing the water control better, because they don't tend to cauliflower quite as much as these 4 in the middle. On to the salt test, and I have to say I'm really intrigued by the texture that the Pinkest Pink sample created, bearing in mind that we've had paints where it's the same pigment combination or it's the same single pigment but different binder, because different brands use different binders, and we've had different reactions to the salt because of the variation in binder. I can't tell you whether this is due to the pigment itself or the binder that was used to create this paint. And I say that because if you remember in the previous episode where we started looking at the opera, I mentioned that Stuart Semple sells the Pinkest Pink as a pigment rather than as watercolor, and so a lovely kind vehicle Achetfeld made a watercolor paint for me, and I don't know what binder she used, so I don't know if this awesome texture is due to the pigment or the binder she chose to use with this pigment. But I think it's really cool texture. It's slightly more unusual than what we've seen in the series. Normally you see something like this, but this is more intense in terms of the result of having the salt on there. If we look at the 7 professional quality watercolors, I would say the most reactive one was Schmincke, with the least reactive one being Sennelier and Jackson's equally. It's not much surprise that the Jacksons and Sennelier have performed very similarly in the salt test, because that's what we've seen consistently throughout this series, which definitely does go towards the theory that Sennelier and Jackson's are the same paint. Winsor Newton did its own thing in terms of how it reacted. The fluorescent pigment separated from the quinacridone magenta pigment and made these pools of bright pink patches. Holbein reacted, I would say, a medium amount, and then Daniel Smith, Sennelier, Mission Gold and Jackson art, I would say, is if you want a reaction from salt, then I would avoid these 4 brands. Finally, let's take a look at how these colors mixed with other colors. For this color test, I chose my usual 3 primary colors, the yellow, magenta and cyan, and then the complementary color to a opera is a blue green, and in this case I chose Hooker's green for the comparison. First thing you'll notice that the Pinkest Pink produces the palest mix, and that's not surprising. It's just fluorescent powder and no real pigmented pigment, if we can say that as a sentence. It has very little tinting strength, and so if you want to use this on your palette, you're going to start struggling if you have really strong colors on your palette along with the Pinkest Pink pigment. We noticed in the previous sheet with the salt test where the Winsor Newton one, the fluorescent pigments kind of pulled into patches of small areas, and I'm kind of seeing the same kind of thing over here when I mixed it with the Hooker's Green. I see a big patch of fluorescent here. It's a lot more subtle than with the salt test, and then bits here and here. Out of the ones that doesn't include the Pinkest Pink, the least tinting strength one was the Schmincke's one. You can really see the green still there, and the colors are pretty close to where they were before. Whereas with the Mission Gold's one, you can see this turning a purple color. It's a very bright mix. I would say though that the highest tinting strength one is the Daniel Smith one. When you mix it with the yellow, it creates a lovely bright orange, and you get a nice violety color. Not quite as violety as the Mission Gold's one, but it's still a nice strong color nevertheless. So in terms of mixing with other colors, I would say that the Pinkest Pink isn't a good mixing color. Similarly, if you have strong colors on your palette, highly tinting colors on your palette, then I would say avoid the Schmincke one, because it's really not going to be able to stand up to the strong colors on your palette. If you have strong colors, then go for something like the Daniel Smith or the Mission Gold, depending on how opaque you want the color to be. I would probably avoid the Winsor Newton one just because you get this patchiness, which is not necessarily something you want to happen on your painting. All the other colors, however, do a really good job of dispersing the fluorescence pigment. It's just the Winsor Newton one that struggles with this. So that's it for the Opera Pink. Which one was your favorite? I have to say, Holbein has always been my favorite, and I always thought that the Holbein one is the brightest opera out there. However, in terms of the brightest opera, Mission Gold's one definitely wins hands down. It is just one notch brighter in comparison to Holbein and Daniel Smith. The Mission Gold though does suffer from the fact that it's a much more opaque color than the rest. So if opacity is your problem, then you might have to take the brightness down a notch to be able to use a more transparent one. So if you want more transparency but also a good balance of brightness, I would say these two is a good bet. I definitely wouldn't recommend either the Sennelier or the Jackson art one, because they're just so gloopy and it's really hard to get an even layer down. In terms of Schmincke and Winsor Newton, these two, they can be a little bit finicky. You get these uneven patches of fluorescence, and particularly with Winsor Newton, we've seen that in the salt test and the color mix test as well. In terms of the Pinkest Pink, well, the debate is really on, is it the Pinkest Pink? And as I said before, I think it has the most fluorescent pink in it, because I'm going to guess that it's mostly, if not all, made with the pink fluorescence. So yes, it's going to be the most fluorescent pink. However, in terms of my definition of opera and pink, and it's the brightest pink color, then the Mission Gold's one wins hands down. My personal choice, I would say, is still the Holbein or maybe the Daniel Smith, but probably the Holbein, because it's not as opaque as the Mission Gold. Okay, it's not as bright as the Mission Gold either. However, it is more transparent than the Mission Gold one. And I probably would choose the Holbein over the Daniel Smith just because it's a little bit more easy to get an even wash down on the paper. So which color is your favorite, and has your favorite opera brand changed from before you watched these two videos and since you watched these two videos? Do let me know in the comments down below. This is the final episode. This is the last episode of this season of the Colossal Color Showdown, but don't worry, new season is in the plan. There is a goal on Patreon right now that we're working towards for the second season of the Colossal Color Showdown. This series of comparing up to 12 different brands does require a lot more money than my other series do, where I maybe compare 2 colors per video. So I really do need your help in making the second season possible. If you have learned a lot from this series and perhaps it has saved you money, and only if you can afford to, please do head on over to Patreon and sign up to the many tiers that you can choose from, with lots and lots of rewards, including physical rewards such as massive dot card that has all of Holbein's 108 different colors, original paintings, as well as dot cards of artist quality watercolor that changes every month. I also want to take this opportunity to say a massive thank you to all my dear sweet patrons who have supported me through this who has made this series possible. Without them, without their financial support, as well as their generous donations of some of the watercolors, this series would not be possible. So thank you so very much. Now this series is over, but of course us looking at colour will not be over. So thank you for coming on this journey with me and continuing to come on this journey with me. Thank you so much for watching this series, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!